General Kethmer stood on the bridge of his flagship, the Eternal Dominion. The massive ship stretched over 2 miles long and carried enough firepower to destroy entire worlds. Around him, hundreds of officers worked at their stations, monitoring the 50,000 ships that made up the Crimson Fleet. The general was tall, even by Valdari standards. His gray skin bore the ritual scars of countless victories, each mark telling the story of another species that had fallen before his army. His 4 arms moved with practiced efficiency as he reviewed the latest intelligence reports on his holographic display. For 300 years, the Crimson Fleet had never lost a battle. Not once. They had crushed the crystal beings of Nexus Prime, eliminated the machine intelligence of Sector 7, and wiped out the warrior clans of the Outer Rim. Every species that had dared to stand against the Valdari Empire had been defeated, enslaved, or destroyed. Captain Valthus approached the general's command platform. She was younger than Kethmer, but her silver eyes held the same cold confidence that marked all veteran Valdari officers. In her hands, she carried a data pad containing their next assignment. "General, we have received new orders from High Command," Veltha said, offering the pad. Kethmer took the device and scanned its contents. His mouth formed what might have been a smile on a human face, but on Valdari features, it looked more like a predator showing its teeth. "Another pacification mission," he said. "How refreshing. It has been almost 6 months since our last conquest." The target was a species called humans. They lived on a small blue world called Earth in a remote section of the galaxy. According to the intelligence report, they had only recently developed faster-than-light travel. Their technology was primitive, their weapons crude, and their military organization laughable. They have established a single colony world, Veltha's read from her own copy of the report. The planet is called Kepler 44-B, but they have named it New Sol. Population, approximately 50,000 civilians and a small defense force. Kethmer nodded as he studied the tactical analysis. The humans used projectile weapons that fired small metal bullets. Their ships were powered by simple fusion reactors. Their defensive systems consisted of basic energy shields and kinetic barriers. By Valdari standards, they were barely out of the Stone Age. "What is their estimated surrender time?" the general asked. "Intelligence suggests they will capitulate within hours of our arrival," Velthus replied. "Most species do when they see the full might of the Crimson Fleet." This was true. The Valdari had perfected the art of intimidation over centuries of conquest. Their standard approach was simple but effective. They would arrive in overwhelming numbers, demonstrate their superior firepower, and offer terms of surrender. Most intelligent species recognized the futility of resistance and submitted without a fight. The few that chose to fight rarely lasted more than a day. Kethmer walked to the massive viewing window that dominated the front of the bridge. Outside, the Crimson Fleet stretched as far as the eye could see. Battleships the size of cities floated alongside smaller cruisers and destroyers. Fighter craft moved between the larger vessels like schools of metal fish. It was a sight that had brought terror to dozens of worlds, became preparations for jump to human space. The general commanded. "All ships are to maintain standard formation. We will make our usual demonstration upon arrival." The bridge buzzed with activity as officers relayed orders throughout the fleet. Navigation computers calculated jump coordinates. Weapon systems ran diagnostic checks. Its commanders reviewed battle plans that had been used successfully for generations, returned to his command station, and activated his personal communication channel. Within moments, the faces of his squadron commanders appeared on the holographic display. Each one commanded between 2,000 and 5,000 ships. "We have a new target," the general announced. A primitive species called humans. They have one colony world with minimal defenses. It should be a routine operation. Admiral Zexstar commander of the 3rd Squadron, spoke first. "What level of resistance do we expect, General?" "None worth mentioning," Kethmer replied. "Their weapons cannot penetrate our shields. Their ships are too slow to escape our fighters. Their tactics are based on obsolete military doctrine from their home world." Commander Yilmaz of the 7th Squadron raised a concern. "Should we prepare for extended operations? Some species require additional persuasion." Kethmer's expression showed mild amusement. "Commander, we are discussing a species that still uses chemical explosives and metal projectiles. I expect we will be returning to base within a standard week, including travel time." The other commanders nodded in agreement. They had faced similar situations before. Primitive species rarely posed any real challenge to Valdere military might. The key was making a strong first impression that discouraged resistance. "Remember our standard protocols," the general continued. "Full fleet display upon arrival. Demonstration of firepower against a non-essential target. Clear surrender terms with reasonable time limit. They comply. We process them according to Empire regulations. If they resist, we eliminate their military capability and proceed with occupation." The meeting ended, and the commanders returned to their respective ships. Throughout the fleet, preparations continued. Weapon systems were charged to full capacity. Fighter squadrons ran practice formations. Landing forces checked their equipment and reviewed occupation procedures. Captain Velthas remained on the bridge as the final jump preparations were completed. She had served under General Kethmer for over 20 years and had participated in 15 successful conquests. Each time, the result had been the same. Superior Valdere technology and tactics overwhelmed their enemies with minimal casualties. "Navigation. Reports ready for jump," an officer announced. "Weapon systems at full readiness," called another. "All squadrons report formation complete and standing by," added a third. General Kethmer took his position at the center of the command platform. Around him, the bridge fell silent, except for the quiet hum of computers and life support systems. This was always his favorite moment, the calm before another victory that would add to his legend. "Xekia, jump," he commanded. The stars outside. The viewing window stretched into lines of light as the Crimson Fleet entered hyperspace. Within hours, they would arrive at the human colony world. The general expected the humans to surrender quickly once they saw what they faced. After all, no species had ever been foolish enough to fight the galaxy's most unbeatable army, at least not yet. Commander Park Do-yoon was drinking his morning coffee when the alarms started screaming across New Seoul Colony. The hot liquid spilled across his desk as he jumped to his feet and rushed to the communication center. Beside his office window, he could see colonists looking up at the sky with confused expressions. The communication officer, Lieutenant Yoon Min-soo, was already at his station when Park arrived. The young man's face was pale as he stared at his screens. "Commander, we have incoming ships," Yoon said, his voice shaking slightly. "Lots of them." Park moved to the main display screen and felt his breath catch in his throat. A tactical view showed hundreds of red dots approaching their system. Thousands. The computer kept adding more contacts as its sensors detected the massive fleet. "How many?" Park asked. "The computer stopped counting at 50,000, sir," Yoon replied. "It says the number is still growing." Major Kim Hanna burst through the door of the communication center. She was the colony's military coordinator, a tough woman who had served in Earth's Space Defense Force before volunteering for colonial duty. Her brown eyes were hard as she studied the display. "Any communication from the fleet?" she asked, as if in answer to her question, the main screen flickered and changed. A tall, gray-skinned alien appeared. He had 4 arms and cold, dark eyes that seemed to look right through the camera. When he spoke, his voice was deep and carried the tone of someone used to being obeyed. "I am General Kethmer of the Valdare Empire," the alien said. "You will surrender your world immediately and submit to Imperial authority. You have 6 hours to comply." Resistance will result in the complete destruction of your colony and all its inhabitants. The transmission ended, leaving the three humans staring at a blank screen. Park felt his hands trembling slightly as he processed what they had just heard. 50,000 ships, complete destruction, 6 hours. The numbers didn't make sense. New Sol had a population of barely 50,000 people. Why would anyone need such a massive fleet to conquer one small colony? Options, Park asked, though he already knew the answer would not be good. Kim pulled up the colony's defense inventory on her tablet. 12 orbital defense platforms, each armed with mass drivers and basic missile systems. 42 fighter craft, mostly converted mining. Ships with mounted weapons. 1 frigate, the Sol's Pride, commanded by Captain Nam Su-Yang. Against 50,000 ships, Park said quietly. Against 50,000 ships. Kim confirmed Lieutenant Yoon was already working at his communication station. Sir, I'm sending distress signals to Earth and the other colonies. But even if they respond immediately, the nearest help is 3 days away. Park nodded. 3 days. They had 6 hours before the aliens' expected surrender, and 3 days before any help could arrive. The math was simple and brutal. Get me Captain Nam, Park ordered. Within minutes, Captain Nam Su-Young's face appeared on the screen. She was aboard the Sol's Pride, the colony's only real warship. Behind her, Park could see her crew running through combat preparations. Captain, what's your assessment? Park asked. Nam's expression was grim but determined. Commander, I won't lie to you. We're completely outgunned. But the Sol's Pride is fast and well-armed for our size. If we're going to fight, we can make them pay for every inch. The civilian population, Park said. Evacuation shuttles are already being prepared, Kim interjected. We can get most of the non-essential personnel to the underground shelters, or off-world if we have time. Park walked to the window and looked out at the colony. His children were playing in the parks while their parents worked in the agricultural domes. Scientists were conducting research in the laboratories. Families were living peaceful lives, building something new on this distant world. 6 hours to surrender or watch it all burn. Sir, Yoon called from his station. The alien fleet just entered our outer sensor range. They're maintaining formation and approaching slowly. Looks like they want us to see them coming. Okay. Park returned to the display and studied the tactical situation. The Valdari fleet was indeed approaching in a perfect formation that showed off their numbers and organization. It was clearly meant to intimidate. They're trying to scare us into surrendering, Kim observed. Is it working? Park asked with a slight smile. Kim smiled back. Terrified, sir, but still here. The next few hours passed quickly as the colony prepared for the impossible. Evacuation shuttles launched, carrying families with young children. The orbital defense platforms powered up their weapons and ran system checks. Fighter pilots climbed into their cockpits and began pre-flight procedures in the communication center. Park watched the alien fleet grow larger on the sensors. Long-range scans revealed ships the size of cities, bristling with weapons that could destroy entire continents. The technology gap was obvious and overwhelming. Sir Yoon said quietly. Incoming transmission from the aliens. General Kethmer's face appeared on the screen again. This time, he looked mildly amused rather than threatening. Humans of New Sol, he said. Your time limit approaches. We have analyzed your defenses and find them laughably inadequate. You cannot hope to resist the might of the Valdari Empire. Surrender now, and your lives will be spared. The transmission ended, waiting for a response. Park looked around the communication center. Kim stood at attention, ready for orders. Yoon waited at his station, hands poised over the controls. Through the window, he could see the lights of the colony and the stars beyond. Open a channel, Park said, finally. The screen activated, showing his own face being transmitted to the alien fleet. General Kethmer Park began, keeping his voice steady. I am Commander Park Doyan of New Seoul Colony. We have received your demands and considered them carefully. He paused, thinking of the children in the shelters and the families who had come here to build new lives. We respectfully decline your offer, Park continued. This world is under human protection. If you wish to take it, you will have to fight for it. He nodded to Yoon, who cut the transmission. The communication center fell silent. Outside, the first alien ships were becoming visible as bright dots against the stars. Well, Kim said quietly, I guess we're going to find out what humans are really made of. Park nodded, watching the approaching fleet. 50,000 ships against a handful of defenders. The odds were impossible, but they were still here. The battle for New Seoul was about to begin. General Kethmer stared at the communication screen in disbelief. In 300 years of conquest, no species had ever refused his surrender demand. When facing the full might of the Crimson Fleet, the humans' simple words, code in his mind. We respectfully decline your offer. Sir, your orders, Captain Veltus asked from beside him. Kethmer shook his head slightly, still processing what had just happened. Began standard intimidation protocol. Destroy one of their orbital platforms. Task should convince them to reconsider. The order went out across the fleet. The massive battleship Thunder of Worlds moved into position and charged its primary plasma cannon. The weapon could vaporize a mountain, and the humans would have no defense against it. The cannon fired. A brilliant beam of energy crossed the void and struck orbital platform 7. The structure exploded in a ball of fire that lit up the darkness of space. Kethmer waited for the humans to contact him with their surrender. Minutes passed, then an hour. The communication systems remained silent. Sir, the sensor officer called out. The humans are moving their fighters into attack formation. On the main display, 42 small craft were launching from the colony world. They looked like insects compared to the Valdari warships, but they were coming straight toward the fleet. This is madness, Veltas muttered. I cannot possibly believe they can win. Kethmer frowned. Something about this situation felt wrong. In all his experience, desperate species either surrendered immediately or made foolish frontal attacks that were easily crushed. But the human fighters were not charging blindly forward. They were spreading out, using the debris from the destroyed platform as cover. Launch fighters, Kethmer ordered. Eliminate their craft quickly. 2,000 Valdari fighters swept toward the human formation. Their plasma weapons far outranged anything the humans possessed, and their shields could absorb multiple hits from primitive projectile weapons. The first engagement should have lasted minutes. Instead, something unexpected happened. Pilot Officer Lee Young-ho led Red Squadron through the debris field of the destroyed platform. His fighter was an old mining ship fitted with kinetic weapons and basic armor. Against Valdari technology, it should have been helpless, but Lee had been studying the enemy ships since they arrived. He noticed something the Valdari probably didn't. Think about, their plasma weapons were incredibly powerful, but they needed clear targeting solutions to work effectively. In the chaos of a debris field, with chunks of metal and electronic interference everywhere, their advantage was reduced. Red Squadron stayed low in the debris. Lee commanded over the radio. Use the wreckage for cover. Hit their sensor arrays, not their armor. The human fighters darted between pieces of twisted metal, appearing suddenly to fire at the Valdari craft before disappearing again. Their projectile weapons, while primitive, were perfect for this kind of close-range combat. The metal slugs didn't need sophisticated targeting systems, and they could damage the delicate sensor equipment on the Valdari fighters within the first hour. 6 Valdari fighters had been disabled or destroyed. The humans lost 3 of their own, but they were achieving something impossible. They were winning individual engagements against superior technology. On the colony surface, Major Kim Hanna watched the space battle through her command center displays. She had been a military strategist on Earth before coming to New Sol, and she understood something important about warfare that the Valdari apparently did not. "They're fighting like they expect us to fight like them," she said to her staff. "Big formations, direct confrontation, overwhelming force. But that's not how humans fight when we're outnumbered." Kim activated the colony's defense grid. Instead of concentrating her forces in obvious positions, she spread them across the entire settlement. Small teams with portable weapons took positions in buildings, behind barriers, and in the underground tunnels that connected different parts of the colony. When the first Valdari landing craft approached the planet, they expected to face human forces in fortified positions that could be targeted and destroyed with superior firepower. Instead, they found an empty-looking colony that suddenly erupted with weapons fire from dozens of unexpected locations. Valdar soldiers in their advanced armor found themselves under attack from every direction. Humans appeared from hidden positions, fired their weapons, and disappeared before the aliens could respond. The colony became a maze where every corner might hide an enemy. Captain Nam Soo-young commanded the frigate Soul's Pride from the ship's bridge. Her vessel was outnumbered 1,000 to 1, but she had no intention of fighting a conventional battle. "Helm, take us into the asteroid field," she ordered. "Captain, our weapons can't penetrate their shields at long range," her weapons officer warned. "Then we get close," Tom replied with a grim smile. The Soul's Pride accelerated toward a group of Valdari cruisers, using the planet's gravity well to build up speed. The enemy ships moved to intercept, confident that they could destroy the human vessel long before it posed any threat. But Nam had studied the debris from Platform 7 carefully. She had noticed something about how the Valdari shields reacted to high-speed impacts. There was a brief moment when the energy field fluctuated while adjusting to incoming objects. "All power to forward shields," Nam commanded. "Prepare ramming." Speed. The Soul's Pride crashed into the lead Valdari cruiser at maximum velocity. Both ships' shields collapsed on impact, but the human vessel had been built for mining operations in dangerous environments. It was designed to survive collisions. The Valdari cruiser was not, as the alien ship broke apart. Nam's crew fired everything they had into the wreckage, targeting the ship's power core. The explosion took out 2 more Valdari vessels, caught in the blast. Ensign Choi Ji-ho, the ship's navigator, was already calculating their next impossible maneuver. "Captain, if we use the gravity of that moon, we can slingshot around and hit their command ship." "Do it," Nam ordered. Throughout the system, the pattern was the same. Human forces that should have been crushed in minutes were not only surviving, but inflicting real damage on the Valdari fleet. The battle that General Kethmer expected to end in 1 hour stretched into 8 hours, then 12. "Sir," Captain Velthus reported, her voice showing strain for the first time. "We have lost 47 fighters and 6 capital ships. Our ground forces are requesting additional support." Kethmer stared at the tactical display in growing confusion. Coma, the humans were losing the battle, but not in the way defeated enemies were supposed to lose. Every engagement taught them something new. Every attack was different from the last. They were adapting faster than any species he had ever encountered. "Sir, the humans are doing something with our communications," the intelligence officer reported. "They appear to be learning our language." "That's impossible," Velta said. "It takes months to decode a new language." But on the colony surface, Communications Officer Shin Hayori was working with Dr. Bei Jiwan to do exactly that. Using captured transmissions and computer analysis, they were beginning to understand Valdari tactical communications. "We're starting to predict their movements," Shin reported to Major Kim. "They use standard formation patterns that don't change much." Kim smiled grimly. "Then let's teach them something about human unpredictability." The battle raged on, but something fundamental had changed. The Valdari were no longer fighting the same species they had encountered that morning. The humans were evolving under fire, becoming more dangerous with each passing hour. For the first time in 3 centuries, General Kethmer was fighting an enemy that refused to stay defeated. The second day of battle began with an impossible sight. General Kethmer stood on his bridge watching human fighters perform maneuvers that defied everything he knew about space combat. They were using gravity wells from asteroids to change direction suddenly. They were coordinating attacks through the debris field with a precision that seemed supernatural. "Sir, intelligence has decoded more human communications," Captain Veltas reported. "They are sharing tactical information faster than our computers can process it." Kethmer studied the battle displays with growing concern. The humans had lost half their original fighters, but the surviving pilots were now flying like veterans who had fought for years instead of ours. Each engagement taught them something new about Valdari tactics and technology. "How is this possible?" he asked. In the communication center on New Sol, Shin Hyori was working miracles with alien technology. She had spent the entire night listening to Valdari transmissions, and with Dr. Bay's help, she was now understanding their battle coordination. "Major Kim, I can predict their next fighter sweep," Shin called out. "They always send scouts first. Then the main force follows the same flight path." Kim nodded and spoke into her headset. "All pilots, the enemy will approach from Sector 7 in exactly 4 minutes. Lee, can your squadron handle an ambush high above the planet, pilot officer?" Lee Young-ho smiled grimly inside his cockpit. His original squadron of 12 fighters was down to 5, but those 5 had become something special. They moved together like they shared one mind, communicating through quick bursts of code that the aliens couldn't intercept. "Copy that, Major. Red Squadron is ready." Lee positioned his fighters in the shadow of a large asteroid. When the Valdari scouts arrived exactly where Shin had predicted, the humans were waiting. The ambush destroyed 8 enemy fighters before the Valdari even knew they were under attack. But the real breakthrough came from an unexpected source. Lieutenant Yoon Minsu had been studying the wreckage from destroyed Valdari ships as the colony's communication officer. He understood electronic systems better than most. What he discovered changed everything. "Commander Park, you need to see this," Yoon said, excitement clear in his voice. Park joined him at a workstation where pieces of Valdari technology were spread across several tables. Yoon pointed to a damaged device that looked like it was part of a shield generator. "Their energy shields operate on a specific frequency," Yoon explained. "But here's the interesting part. When we hit them with our mining lasers set to this exact frequency, their shields don't just weaken, they completely collapse for about 3 seconds." Stared at the alien device. "You're certain about this?" "I've tested it on 5 different pieces of wreckage. Same result every time. Within an hour, every human weapon in the colony was being modified. The mining equipment, construction tools, even some of the medical devices were converted into shield-disrupting weapons. What had been useless against Valdari defenses suddenly became deadly. The change was immediate and dramatic. Captain Snam guided the Soul's Pride through another impossible attack run. Her ship was barely holding together after 2 days of combat, but her crew had learned to make every shot count. "Target their lead cruiser," Nam commanded. "All weapons, shield disruption frequency first, then everything we have to fight." Weapons fired, and for 3 seconds, the massive Valdari warship was completely defenseless. The Soul's Pride's regular weapons tore through armor that had seemed impenetrable just hours before. The alien cruiser erupted in flames and began falling toward the planet. On the Valdari flagship, alarms were screaming throughout the ship. General Kethmer watched in disbelief as his forces began taking serious casualties for the first time in the battle. "Sir, the humans have found a way to neutralize our shields," the tactical officer reported. We're losing ships faster than acceptable rates. Acceptable rates. Kethmer turned on the officer with fury. We should not be losing ships at all. These are primitives with metal projectiles and chemical explosives. Captain Velthas stepped forward carefully. General, perhaps we should consider that these humans are not like other species we have encountered. What do you mean? They learn, sir. Every hour they fight, they become more dangerous. Their tactics change. Their weapons improve. It's like fighting a completely different enemy every few hours. Kethmer was about to respond when another alarm sounded. Long-range sensors were detecting new contacts approaching the system. Sir, we have incoming ships, the sensor officer announced. Human reinforcements. On the main display, 20 new contacts appeared at the edge of the system. They were moving fast and in formation, but these were not the converted mining ships and basic fighters that had been defending the colony. Admiral Joe Minho commanded the relief fleet from the bridge of the heavy cruiser Inchin's Hammer. He had received a distress call from New Sol 36 hours ago and had immediately gathered every available ship for a rescue mission. But during the journey to New Sol, something remarkable had happened. The ongoing battle was being broadcast across human space. Engineers, scientists, and military experts throughout human territory had been analyzing every second of combat footage. The ships of Joe's fleet carried weapons and defenses that incorporated everything humanity had learned from watching the Valdari fight. Admiral, we're receiving tactical data from the colony, his communication officer reported. They're sending shield frequencies, weapon specifications, and complete battle analysis. Joe smiled as he studied the information. The defenders of New Sol had done more than just survive. They had conducted the most valuable intelligence gathering operation in human history. All ships implement colony defense protocols, Joe commanded. Show these aliens what humans can do when we have time to prepare. The human reinforcements swept into the battle with devastating effectiveness. Their weapons were specifically designed to counter Valdari shields. Their tactics incorporated everything learned from 2 days of combat. Their coordination was perfect because they had been practicing maneuvers based on actual battle. Kada, General Kethmer, watched his carefully organized formations break apart under the human assault. These new ships fought with the same adaptability as the colonial defenders, but they had started with all the lessons already learned. Sir, we need to withdraw, Captain Velthas said urgently. Our casualties are becoming severe. The Crimson Fleet does not retreat, Kethmer replied automatically. Sir, with respect, the Crimson Fleet has never faced anything like this before. Kethmer stared at the tactical display. In 48 hours, the humans had gone from helpless victims to dangerous opponents. They were not just defending themselves anymore. They were winning. Major Kim watched the space battle from her command center as Admiral Joe's ships joined the fight. The alien fleet that had seemed so overwhelming 2 days ago was now being pushed back by human forces that had learned to turn every disadvantage into an advantage. Shin, can you reach Admiral Joe? Kim asked. Yes, Major. Channel open. Admiral, this is Major Kim Hanna, Colony Defense Coordinator. Welcome to New Sol. Joe's voice came through clearly. Major, your people have done something incredible here. Every ship in human space is studying your battle recordings. Kim smiled. We've learned a lot about fighting impossible odds. Admiral, would you like us to share some lessons? Major, I think it's time we taught the galaxy something about human potential. The battle for New Sol was entering its final phase, but the war for humanity's place in the galaxy was just beginning. The species that had once seemed helplessly primitive was revealing its true nature. Humans didn't just fight. They evolved. Admiral Joe Minho's fleet struck the Valdari Formation like lightning. His 20 ships moved in perfect coordination, each vessel playing a different role in an attack pattern that seemed to change every few minutes. The aliens had never seen anything like it. Captain Kong Subin commanded the destroyer Busan Rising, and she was about to demonstrate something that would become legendary throughout the galaxy. Her ship's cargo bay had been converted into a launch platform for thousands of small drones, each one programmed with targeting data gathered from 3 days of battle. "Release the swarm," Kong ordered. The drones poured out of her ship like angry insects. They were simple devices, barely more sophisticated than guided missiles. But there were so many of them that the Valdari point defense systems couldn't target them all. The drones swarmed over 3 Valdari cruisers, attacking weak points that human analysis had identified. Shield generators, sensor arrays, weapon mounts, and communication equipment were destroyed in seconds. The mighty warships became floating hulks, blind and defenseless. General Kethmar watched his fleet falling apart and felt something he had never experienced before: doubt. The humans were not just fighting differently from other species. We were fighting in ways that challenged everything the Valdari understood about warfare. "Sir, we need new tactics," Captain Valtez said urgently. "Our standard formations are being torn apart." "Then we adapt," Kethmar replied. But even as he said it, he realized the problem. The Valdar military machine was built for overwhelming force and predictable tactics. They had used the same successful strategies for 300 years. Adapting quickly was not something they knew how to do. Meanwhile, the humans seemed to reinvent their entire approach to combat every few hours. On New Sol, Commander Park Do-Yan was coordinating the most audacious plan of the entire battle. Communications Officer Shin Hayori had been monitoring Valdari transmissions for 3 days, and she had discovered something important about their command structure. "Commander, their flagship controls everything," Shin explained. "All tactical decisions flow through that one ship. If we could disable it, their entire fleet would lose coordination." Park studied the tactical display. The Valdari flagship, Eternal Dominion, was protected by dozens of escort ships and seemed impossible to reach. "What are you thinking, Shin? We use their own protocols against them. I can send false commands that will create gaps in their formation. But someone would have to get close enough to board their flagship." Major Kim Hanna stepped forward. "Commander, I volunteered to lead a boarding party." "Kim, that's suicide. Even if we get you to their ship, you'd be facing thousands of alien soldiers." Kim smiled grimly. "Sir, humans have been fighting impossible odds for 3 days. I think we're getting good at it." The plan that followed was so crazy that only humans would have attempted it. Captain Nam Su-Yang, whose ship Soul's Pride was barely holding together, volunteered to carry the boarding party directly to the enemy flagship. "We'll use the debris field as cover," Nam explained. "Get close enough for a direct assault. The Soul's Pride might not survive, but we can get your people aboard their ship." Admiral Joe coordinated the attack from his flagship. Human ships throughout the system began converging on the Valdari fleet, drawing attention away from Nam's approach. Fighter squadrons led by Lee Young-ho created chaos among the enemy escorts. "All ships, execute Distraction Protocol 7, Joe commanded. What followed was the most complex military maneuver in human history. Every ship in the human fleet performed a different task, but they all worked together toward one goal: getting a small boarding party onto the enemy flagship. The Soul's Pride, damaged beyond repair, but still functional, accelerated toward the Eternal Dominion. Captain Nam pushed her ship's engines past their safety limits, using every trick she had learned during 3 days of impossible combat. Ramming speed, Nam ordered for the final time. The human frigate crashed through the Valdari escort screen and slammed into the side of the massive flagship. Both ships' shields collapsed, and the Soul's Pride embedded itself in the alien vessel's hull like an arrow, Major Kim led 12 volunteers through the breach. They carried modified mining equipment, improvised weapons, and 3 days of hard-earned knowledge about Valdari technology and tactics. The aliens fought back with everything they had. But they were not prepared for humans in close combat. Kim's team moved through the ship's corridors like ghosts, appearing suddenly to disable critical systems before disappearing again. "Remember the plan," Kim called to her team. "We don't need to win. We just need to reach their command center." Human boarding party fought their way through level after level of the enemy ship. They used ventilation shafts, maintenance tunnels, and emergency passages that the Valdari had never expected anyone to find. When they finally reached the bridge, General Kethmer was waiting for them. The Valdari commander was tall and intimidating, armed with advanced weapons and protected by personal shields. But as he faced the humans, he saw something in their eyes that made him hesitate. "You cannot win," Kethmer said. "Even if you kill me, my fleet will destroy your world." Major Kim smiled and activated a device that Shin had given her. It was a communication jammer that would cut the flagship off from the rest of the fleet. "General, we don't need to kill you," Kim replied. "We just need to show you something." Outside the ship, the battle was reaching its conclusion. Without coordination from their flagship, the Valdari fleet began to fall apart. Its human ships pressed their advantage, using tactics that changed faster than the aliens could respond. Captain Kong's drone swarms disabled ship after ship. Admiral Zhou's formation attacks broke through Valdar defensive lines. Pilot Officer Lee's fighters swept the space around New Seoul clean of enemy craft on the bridge of the Eternal Dominion. General Kethmer watched his undefeated fleet being systematically destroyed by a species he had dismissed as primitive. For the first time in 3 centuries, the Crimson Fleet was losing a battle. "How?" he asked quietly. Major Kim lowered her weapon. "General, you asked how we defeated you so quickly. Dad, we didn't defeat you quickly. We defeated you continuously. Every moment you remained the same. We became something new." She gestured toward the tactical displays showing the space battle. "Your fleet is powerful, but it's also predictable. You fight the same way you fought 300 years ago. We've been fighting for 3 days, and we're already completely different from when we started." Kethmer stared at the displays in growing understanding. The humans were not just winning through superior tactics or technology. They were winning because they refused to stop changing, learning, and improving. "What do you want?" he asked finally. "Your surrender," Kim replied simply. When the Valdari fleet withdrew from New Seoul, they carried with them a message that would spread across the galaxy. The Crimson Fleet, undefeated for 3 centuries, had met their match in a species that turned every challenge into an opportunity to evolve. Admiral Zhou stood on the bridge of his flagship, watching the alien ships retreat. Around him, the human fleet was already analyzing the battle, learning lessons that would make them even more effective in future conflicts. "Sir, what are your orders?" his communication officer asked. Zhou smiled. "Send a message to Earth. Tell them the galaxy just learned something important about humanity. We're not the strongest species, and we're not the most advanced, but we might be the most dangerous because we never stopped becoming better than we were. The battle for New Seoul was over, but humanity's journey into the galaxy was just beginning." They had announced their presence, not with conquest, but with the most powerful weapon in the universe, the ability to adapt, learn, and evolve under pressure. The galaxy would never be the same.